Welcome to Legal 123s with ByrdAdatto. Legal issues simplified through real client stories and real-world experiences. Creating simplicity in 3, 2, 1.
Welcome back to Legal 123s with ByrdAdatto. I'm your host, ByrdAdatto, with my co-host, Michael Byrd.
As business attorneys for healthcare practices, we meet a lot of interesting people and learn their amazing stories. This season's theme, Brad, is What Now? Each episode will involve a real client story with a high-pressure moment for that practice.
Michael, I got to say, today I'm feeling dangerous. It's not because I'm on my third cup of hot tea. Something else in the air. I kind of feel it.
It always feels dangerous when we're together, Brad, mostly because of you. But I think it is you. You're the liability here.
Wow, okay. Starting off early today. I like it. But seriously, why have real Brad when you could have digitally trademarked Brad?
I think what I heard you say is less real Brad. I'm in total agreement.
I don't believe I said that. Be careful, Michael. I might trademark my voice, and next thing you know, every time you try to sound smarter than me, I'll send you an invoice.
That would require you to actually sound smarter first.
Oh, man, I walked in that one. Okay, fair. Michael, I'm working on my AI version of me, and I hope to release it someday to the real world.
Does it keep breaking because it just talks to anyone and everyone it runs into?
That's a fair point, too. But for those not familiar, celebrities like myself are starting to trademark their voices, likenesses, even catchphrases. All this work to counter the AI deepfakes, basically digitalizing or digitally cloning themselves first and putting a giant, do not clone sticker on their faces.
Well, your humility knows no bounds, Mr. Celebrity. I do like the idea of putting a giant sticker over your real face, though.
Oh, man. Walked in that one, too. Okay. Well, you're right. Actually, you have a great radio face. Listen, if anyone is digitally cloning me, I want royalties first. And if you're making a clone of Michael, please make one version, at least one, that shows up to meetings on time.
I don't think AI is capable of that yet.
Fair. But seriously, this is really getting interesting, Michael. You got people like Taylor Swift trademarking phrases like, hey, it's Taylor, and Matthew McConaughey and locking down his voice clips, which honestly, if someone's impersonating a Matthew, at least they can make, they got to do the all right correctly, which I don't think I did correctly, Michael.
Groan. Dad joke.
Okay. But here's a legal twist. The strategy is kind of clever because it's still untested, and so it's not really an ironclad protection that they may seek to get. It might keep some bad actors away, but if someone really wants to mess with you, they're probably not afraid that you did a trademark filing.
Yeah, people that tend to commit fraud on the public don't spend much time checking trademark laws.
Of course, this actually raises a bigger question, Michael. Can you ever get too much Brad or even digital Brad?
Speaking of walking into it, you just opened the door for my favorite moment of our Boston trip.
Oh, no.
Audience, we were having dinner with our friend and client, Stephen Camp, who has been on as a guest, and he had the good fortune, kind of sitting next to Brad. And at one point, he just announced to the table, too much Brad. So I think that there can be too much Brad.
No, I don't recall that moment at all. I don't remember anyone ever saying that. But the serious issue is like voice, image, likeness. Like this is becoming a very valuable asset. And actually, believe it or not, lawmakers are trying to catch up. There's even talk about legislation called the No Fakes Act.
Well, that's actually a thing, the No Fakes Act. You're not making it up. But for those that don't know, it's a bipartisan bill which aims to establish a federal right of publicity to protect individuals' voice and likeness from unauthorized AI-generated digital replicas. I don't think as of today's date it has not passed the Senate.
Yeah. Well, unlike this act is if it's not passed or until it's passed, I guess, I will continue beta testing my AI version. Right now, it just says, it nods and says, great point, Michael, about every 5 minutes.
So it's accurate as to the real Brad.
God, I got to work on this. Yeah, I walked right into that one too. Well, they better be nice to you, Michael, as I don't want my digital twin. You don't want my digital twin out there, causing you problems.
Killing me with dad jokes. Yep. Yes, that's true. Just relentless. Why don't we just get into today's story?
All right.
Okay.
As a reminder, audience members, this season we're talking about the one big question: what now? Because every successful practice hits a moment where things just they don't go as planned. And today we'll address what now when one unhappy patient turns into a cascading business problem.
Yes, this happens more than people think, particularly in elective medicine. And this is those types of things that start small and can mushroom very quickly into staff stress, online reviews, regulators, and lawsuits.
Yeah, and the key distinction here we're going to explore is not just what happened, but how the doctors respond to it. In today's story, we have two brilliant surgeons and how they handle this type of challenge completely differently. We have two partners. One's Dr. Matthew, one's Dr. Taylor, both nationally recognized plastic surgeons, both incredibly skilled, top of their game. They do speaking engagements, stellar reputations, strong revenue.
Can't stop picturing Matthew McConaughey and Taylor Swift in Scrubs right now, but I think that was appropriate use of names based on our opening.
Awesome. All right, good. But very different philosophies between these two physicians. Enter our first unhappy patient. Let's just call her Lisa. Lisa had a cosmetic procedure. Expectations didn't match reality. She's upset. She comes back to the practice complaining, demanding a refund from Dr. Matthew.
Yeah, I think I mentioned this a moment ago, just how this is a common scenario. And it really does come down in plastic surgery that most of the time it is an elective procedure. In other words, this person is making a choice to have someone cut on them to make them look better. And so the expectations that come with that can be out of line with reality. And so it's just a ripe situation for an unhappy patient, even when you have a great clinical result.
Yeah. So after hearing Lisa's demand, Dr. Matthew started to evaluate the situation. He was frustrated as the outcome was excellent, again, clinically speaking, but he knew that he could not just evaluate just on this emotional perspective. He needed to take a step back and think bigger picture, like what impact we could have on his reputation risk, his staff, costs of this escalating, and he had some interesting things that he didn't want to get off track, and he had to. What he had started doing a while back was he had a kind of a business judgment revenue spot where he kind of put money, otherwise might call like a slush fund, where he kind of always in the back of his mind had a certain amount of money sitting there.
Yeah, I remember this conversation from some time ago, and he would set money aside. He had a reserve set aside for stuff like this, and so in other words, he's budgeting for the reality that not every patient believes their outcomes are perfect. And sometimes resolving a problem quickly is the smartest business move, even if it doesn't feel good from a fairness perspective.
Yeah, exactly. In fact, Dr. Matthew had a previous conversation with our firm on the strategy of dealing with these types of requests. So when Lisa made this request, he had a plan. He didn't let his ego or desire to win cloud his thinking. After thanking Lisa for her feedback, he actually agreed to refund the medical services, and she had to execute a refund agreement from the on behalf of the practice. And in his mind, this offered a reasonable solution, kept the interaction calm, and everyone was able to move on.
Yeah, you mentioned refund agreement, and this is typically not just here's your money back as you requested, but if we're gonna give you this refund, we want some certain conditions to go with it, including a release and some other protections for the practice that brings closure. I'm curious, just based on how you set this up, did Dr. Taylor have a different mindset?
Well, you know the answer.
I know.
Yes, very rules driven was Dr. Taylor. Every request must be proven. Every issue must be defended, which sounds great until, again, you said this earlier, real life shows up. Because unlike how Dr. Matthew handled his patient, Dr. Taylor chose a different path. So Dr. Taylor, in this case, she had a patient we'll call Sammy, followed the same story. Sammy had a cosmetic procedure. The expectations didn't match reality. She's upset. She comes back to the practice complaining and demanding a refund from Dr. Taylor.
Yeah, and going back to how common this is, we actually have clients where there's multiple surgeons and they may be dealing with multiple unhappy patient situations at the same time. And so it's just it is a business reality for, getting into, treating patients, but for sure into the elective side of things.
Absolutely. And Dr. Taylor, she actually didn't get emotional about the request. She refused the refund as that was not her policy. And clinically, again, the surgery was a success.
So she sounds like she had a plan and stuck to it.
Right. By refusing the refund, Sammy started getting emotional. She started by calling the staff and repeatedly messaging them, and finally actually started lashing out by posting negative reviews on multiple different platforms.
This is the mushroom effect I was talking about. It can get ugly fast when the patient starts spiraling.
Yeah. And Dr. Taylor stays the course and refuses to pay and starts becoming a bit more stressor on the entire practice as Sammy has become a very disruptive patient.
To take a step back, the thinking that usually goes behind a policy like this that Dr. Taylor's following is, if you believe you did nothing wrong and then you give a refund, you will develop a reputation for doing this and the floodgates will open. We have definitely had clients with this view on making refunds over the years.
Yeah, the stress has an entire practice on the edge now as Sammy is trying to get other patients of the practice to also start posting negative reviews. And at this point, Dr. Matthews' team is also getting stressed as they now worry about the negative actions that will impact the patient flow that's going to Dr. Matthew.
Yeah, as we've said, it can get really ugly. We've seen patients go really extreme in this effort to be heard. And we've seen building dedicated websites, posting blogs with the doctor, calling the doctor, names like the Butcher of Los Angeles or some insert city. And Brad, just as a tip, it's not good to be a surgeon and to be described as a butcher.
Fair point. I'll keep that in mind. Well, based on the feedback from the entire team, Dr. Matthew decided to speak with Dr. Taylor about finding a resolution to this matter and not allowing this to continue to escalate the way it was going.
Yeah, I'm sure, he's concerned, as you mentioned, about, what's the blowback to him, but also, the practice itself, if it's exposed, it can eat into his revenue stream.
Yeah. So Dr. Taylor, unfortunately or fortunately, however you want to look at it, disagreed and dug in. She explained she was operating from a place of control, that her policy was not to refund good work, and that the rules should apply no matter the patient and the stress that comes from it.
She had a plan and she was sticking to it.
Yep. And so Dr. Matthew disagreed, but based on how the governing documents were kind of put together for their practice and really kind of how they ran their practice, he could just force her as a partner to change that plan that she was sticking to. And the calls and emails from Sammy continued for a while, but eventually they finally stopped.
Relief. She just finally decided to move on to somebody else, I'm guessing. It must have been a relief for the practice.
It was, until later learned that, why did Sammy stop? Well, Sammy had hired an attorney who filed a malpractice case against the practice and Dr. Taylor.
Well, I guess that's what we would call an escalation?
Yes.
Okay.
And suddenly the cost of standing her ground had multiplied, and now she needed to get her medical malpractice carrier involved.
Yeah, audience, one of the first things you have to do if you get for a surgeon, if you get sued, is notify your carrier, and they will, step in and provide the, defense. So the good news is that's what you paid for. That's why you have insurance. The bad news is you end up paying more. Your premiums are going to go up over time as you have a claims history, and so it's not insignificant from a financial cost.
Yeah, and on top of everything else, Dr. Taylor, who had created this false sense of security, now needed to spend more time and resources and energy on this lawsuit.
Can't overstate what you just said, Brad, because that's the biggie. Is just think about all the time that Dr. Taylor's already spent, just holding ground dealing with the various levels of escalation. In a lawsuit, it's not just like the lawyers are out there running it and you just continue doing things. It's going to take time and energy, as you said, and it's a real distraction both professionally and personally.
Yeah. So Dr. Matthew recommended they settle this lawsuit as soon as possible and move on. But guess what, Michael? Guess what Dr. Taylor wanted to do?
I'm guessing based on the fact that I know the answer, she didn't.
She did not want to settle this. You're correct. She checked all the boxes correctly in surgery, and she did not want to settle it with a bad patient.
Holding firm. All right, let's go to break and learn what happened to Dr. Taylor and the practice.
Many business owners use legal counsel as a last resort rather than as a proactive tool that can further their success. Why? For most, it's the fear of unknown legal costs. ByrdAdatto's Access Plus program makes it possible for you to get the ongoing legal assistance you need for one predictable monthly fee. That gives you unlimited phone and email access to the legal team, so you can receive feedback on legal concerns as they arise. Access Plus, a smarter, simpler way to access legal services. Find out more. Visit ByrdAdatto.com today.
Welcome back to Legal 123s with ByrdAdatto. I'm your host, ByrdAdatto, with my co-host, Michael Byrd. Now, Michael, this season our theme is What Now? And this show, we're really trying to explore what happens, when a patient complaint happens.
Yeah, and we have Dr. Taylor and Dr. Matthew, two partners in a practice who have different strategies of dealing with this situation. And we got to experience kind of this play out real time at the same time, and it really illustrates the differences. So, on the one hand, Dr. Matthew, had met with you and had a strategy. He had a business reserve fund. It was very intentional. He was very intentional about risk management, and he decided that was his priority so that he could focus on, creating revenue and not have these time distractions. And so when the situation arose, he was prepared to deal with the situation. He, like Dr. Taylor, had a good clinical outcome, but just recognized that the quickest way to put this one to bed based on his strategy was to do the refund agreement and make it go away. Dr. Taylor, on the other hand, also had a strategy, and it was very much based on the idea of who's right. And if she's right, in other words, the clinical outcome is right, then she was going to stand her ground and no one was going to take advantage of her. And she did stand that ground, and we kind of saw how that played out. And so we left or concluded with these two very different strategies with two different outcomes. And, we can kind of jump from there to, talk through the differences.
Yeah. And so, as you said, same practice, two different stories, two different strategies on how to deal with patient requests because they're complaining about something. So you started with Dr. Matthew. So let's address Dr. Matthew's response. What was your initial takeaway about how was he acting?
Yeah, he was acting like a Navy SEAL, and this is not, audience, an outcome-based reasoning just because he got a good result and things went away. It's more the strategy. Like, he had decided that this risk, patient complaint risk, is something that he was going to have to contend with his business. He consulted with you, which may have been a mistake, but
probably,
at least he talked to someone who claims to be an attorney, and came up with a plan.
That's a good one. I like
yeah.
that.
And then he created the financial reserves to deal with it, and then he was able to stay energy neutral, which is very difficult in these situations, but to not get emotional and make a business decision. So he had a plan, he stuck with his plan, he executed on his plan, and he did get the result he wanted. How about you? What do you think?
Totally agree. Navy SEAL, he was acting as a Navy SEAL. And, Dr. Matthew saw this as a way which he wanted to resolve these situations quickly. Not always the cheapest in the moment, but predictable, He had his strategy. He could continue with it and execute it. And for him, he was able to protect his team. They weren't overwhelmed by these stuff. His reviews actually were protected also. So they weren't blowing it up with some, crazy people posting stuff. And he helped keep his exposure, a little bit lower just because of the way he thought it. It was important to note that even if I'm sure you said emotionally, I'm sure he still got triggered by the patient complaint, but he didn't react emotionally or defensively to it because he just saw it as part of doing business in this area.
Yeah, and it's really important to think about not just the speed, but as we've talked about, the strategy. And so if you go speedily and you just react quickly, but you don't have a strategy as to why you're going that way, it can also create risk in these situations. And so he may not get the protection he thought he was going to get by going fast. He actually, might create that very reputation that we heard Dr. Taylor's afraid of if all he did was react quickly to make things go away. And so, to your point on this discussion of him acting like a Navy SEAL, it's so important that, to your point, slow is smooth, smooth is fast.
Yeah, I agree. And you're practicing medicine, it's going to be stressful. And so stressful situations will happen. And doctors can react quickly, but if they don't have a proper internal process of weighing the pros and cons, and actually they will have a blind spot, mostly to their emotions, probably, Michael, and so just because you've done everything right on paper doesn't even mean that you're reducing your risk, which is somewhat where we're going with Dr. Taylor, I think. How do you think she was acting?
Yeah, it's tricky because you could make the case that she also had a plan and stuck with it. But really, I think she was acting like a cruise director because her plan was really based on, that sense of right and wrong. And, once she decided that she didn't do anything wrong, there was just a rigidity to how she ran her business, and she stuck to her gun, so to speak, and went all the way through. I mean, think about, it's not just being firm with the patient, she was firm with her partner, and really didn't consider kind of the full picture of what's the pros and cons here, and so I think that's one of the dangers of acting like a Navy SEAL is you just, you decide how you're going to be on something, and you just are, like I said, rigid, and you can't veer as the situation dictates.
I think you mean cruise director.
What did I say?
A Navy SEAL.
I said Navy SEAL? Yeah, cruise director.
Yeah. So, you said acting like a Navy SEAL. But in this case, I agree with you. And, I hate agreeing with you that she was acting like a cruise director. So, unfortunately, you are correct again. Hopefully, we're not keeping tabs on how many times you're correct. But I think many times in situations like this, people get caught up in the legal issue, and they forget to start thinking about long-term business decisions. And sometimes the smartest answer is not just the winning or to be right, is how can I get this resolved? And now, Michael, in other shows, we have actually discussed when doctors act like pirates. In this story, we don't have a pirate, but how do you think a pirate would have handled a patient complaint?
Yeah, it kind of touches on what we talked about a moment ago. A pirate would react to the situation and do whatever made sense in the moment. So there's a complete absence of strategy in pirate mode. You're going fast and breaking things. Some pirates would just give the refund, and they don't even bother to get the refund agreement with the release. And, unfortunately, some pirates also might just ignore the situation. They're so scattered trying to run the business that there can be this, stick your head in the sand moment when ugly situations arise where they just kind of hope it'll go away.
Yeah, and as you said, some pirates will just give that refund. Unfortunately, we have a lot of different stories in which someone does give a refund back to the patient, and they don't realize that's not going to be the first bite at the apple. In fact, they can keep coming back and asking for more free services or free spa services. And so instead of actually dealing with a patient that has a complaint, it's just going to keep building on top of each other because now you have this fear. If I don't give them this, they're going to want they will file a complaint. But I've already given their money back, or I've already given them extra procedure. So
wait, I want to add in too.
Hold on. So be real careful that if you are going to do that, have that conversation about if I do give you extra services or I give you the cash or the whatever it is, that you have somebody to protect your practice and yourself afterwards. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, I was thinking of other things that a pirate may do. Is another strategy that it's not in play here is surgeons will offer to do a revision.
Yeah.
And so sometimes the pirates, they get caught up in the moment and they want the patient to be happy. And so they offer to go cut them again where there's some real signals that that's a really bad idea.
Mm-hmm.
And so, again, the key is the just absence of strategy.
Yeah. So back to our story, Dr. Taylor is acting like a cruise director and staying the course. And she actually allowed the problem in this case to really fester. And the staff really started absorbing most of the stress because it was impacting their workflow, the culture, the morale. And if she had a strategy that was flexible versus, in her case, rigid control, she may have been able to reduce the actual overall impact it had on the entire practice, and in her case, her pocketbook too.
Yeah, I'll give you one, Brad. That was a good point. So what happened with the case that Sammy had filed against Dr. Taylor?
Believe it or not, audience members, it was eventually settled nearly a year after it was filed, but it's very stressful on her and in the entire practice. This is why if she had paused and asked the question, how this impact me and my business long term, she might have had a bigger picture to think about. Sometimes you pause and take that breath and remove your emotions or yourself from the I have to win or I'm right. You start asking the questions like, what does this decision look like 6 months from now or 12 months from now? Not just, again, am I right?
All right, Brad, let's provide some final thoughts. So when you find yourself dealing with that one difficult patient situation, the question is, what now?
Yeah. In first off, we're humans. And as humans, we have to really watch our emotions getting the better of us. And sometimes that means that we're going to lash out. Sometimes it may mean we're digging in our heels. And the few things you can do right away is just immediately start de-escalating the situation. Again, we said this earlier, slow down. Nothing good happens when you respond immediately and especially out of frustrations.
It's a great point. We say be strategic, but definitely emotions can be the enemy of that. And so you want to create space to think strategically instead of reacting defensively in the emotions of that moment.
Yeah, and we always say great communication starts with listening. So don't just respond to the patient, but be actually present and understanding why is the patient really upset? What's really happening? Because half the time they don't want a legal fight or a legal argument. They just really want to be heard, and you being empathetic and understanding their position actually may help you in the long run.
Yes. Third, and this is not an easy one for you, Brad, but you need to separate your ego from the outcome. This is not about proving you're right. It's about protecting your business.
Yeah. So, Michael, we're almost out of time, but winning the argument but losing their reputation, that's trouble. That's not good for your practice. Really evaluate those risks. Take that step back and try to figure out how to make things better instead before it gets worse. And sometimes the cheapest solution is the one that resolves the issue early, even if it doesn't feel like it's fair at that moment.
Yeah, and kind of coming in with my final thoughts, you've heard me say this before in the office and I think on this podcast, that I always used to tell my kids there's only one fair, and that's once a year in September, the State Fair of Texas.
That's right.
And so fairness really is not a good strategy for protecting your business. You want to have a plan, and you don't want to make it up as you go. You need to have a framework of how you approach it, who handles the complaints, when do issues get escalated, what are you going to do there, and what are the tools in your toolkit that you're willing to use when these situations arise. And consistency and having a plan that reduces the chaos and really leads to stronger protection.
Absolutely. Well, audience members, that's all the time we have, but don't worry. We're back next Wednesday when we're back, and we'll address, I have a cash flow issue. What now? Thanks again for joining us today. And remember, if you like this episode, please subscribe. Make sure to give us a 5-star rating and share with your friends.
You can also sign up for the ByrdAdatto newsletter by going to our website at ByrdAdatto.com.
ByrdAdatto is providing this podcast as a public service. This podcast is for educational purposes only. This podcast does not constitute legal advice, nor does it establish an attorney-client relationship. Reference to any specific product or entity does not constitute an endorsement or recommendation by ByrdAdatto. The views expressed by guests are their own, and their appearance on the program does not imply an endorsement of them or any entity they represent. Please consult with an attorney on your legal issues.